one of the I can't remember who I was listening to. May have been the Scarlet and Gray podcast postured that maybe he just couldn't see over the defensive line, so everything was inside of 10 yards.
Maybe. I mean, listen, I know there's a lot of chatter about his height this year for whatever reason, but the kid's put up.
Yeah, he put up numbers.
He's put up numbers for 11 years now. I guess, it is cumulative. He's been around for a while, but yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Okay. So I dropped a couple out that I was interested in paying attention to. Tennessee at NC State is one. And I just want to see what Tennessee looks like against, a team that can throw the ball around a little bit. And NC State does a good job of that. The other one was the border war with Iowa State at Iowa after Iowa put up 40 last week, kind of paying attention to that one. Just impact on the Big Ten. Iowa always plays good defense, but if they found some offense, they could be a sneaky pick this year to sneak into the top 12 for the playoffs. And then at noon, thanks big noon kickoff for screwing everything up. Texas comes into the big house. Dan, what do you think?
I think it's going to be a long day for Michigan. I really do. I don't think the problems that were exposed last week are going to be resolved this week. I think Texas is going to outscore them. And I'm not saying it's going to be a shootout. I just think they're going to outscore them. I think that Michigan's offense is brutal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's bad. It's Iowa-esque. And I just don't see how they keep Texas below, 21, 24 points. And I don't see them scoring more than, 10 or 14 themselves.
Yeah, I think this is one of those cases where I do think Michigan can keep it close in the first half, but the longer that game wears on, the harder that's going to get if Michigan can't maintain and sustain drives to give their defense a rest, no matter how good they are. We've seen this in the past. Like team defenses just get worn out, and eventually, the elite skill position players make plays. And,
yeah.
And I don't know, man. I thought Will Johnson looked like burnt toast last week, except for the fourth quarter, so where he made a couple plays.
He made a couple plays, but yeah, I mean, he got exposed a little bit, and then, I know he had the pick six, but you need to go back and watch that play. I mean, it was a screen. You had two receivers go to one guy to block when one of them was supposed to go to Will Johnson. If they go and lay hands on Will Johnson, that guy might walk that into the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you're looking at a 23-17 game.
Yeah. That was
I mean, he caught the ball and he returned it for a touchdown. So good for him. But I don't think it was this miraculous.
No.
Somebody was in a chat this morning saying that, he jumped it perfectly. No, he didn't.
Yeah.
He was literally unblocked on a screen.
Yeah. Well, that was if you flash back to KJ Hill at Penn State, if Austin Mack doesn't pick up the safety, that probably happens on that swing pass to KJ Hill too. So,
yeah.
Anyways,
the other thing that's really going to be really interesting to see, Michigan, they blitzed on almost 60% of the plays last week.
Yeah.
I mean, Wink Martindale he feels a lot more like Don Brown. I know a lot of their folks thought that he was coming in and running the same defense that Minter did, but he's a risk taker. Yeah. And I just can't. I mean, if he does that this week, and maybe he did that to throw Texas off. Maybe he's Mensa smart. I don't know. New York Giant fans don't think so. But if he does, if he's that aggressive tomorrow, I think Sark and Ewers are going to carve him up.
Well, this is something I put a little bit of thought into, and obviously this isn't a Texas show, but Kirby went to Georgia after working with Nick Saban, and he built Alabama in Georgia. He went and got speed. He got linemen. They can run the rock. They play good defense. And he built Alabama's football team the way that Saban built Alabama, but he built it in Georgia. Sark is doing the same thing in Texas. It took Kirby about 5 years. Sark might be a little bit ahead of the curve, but I think Sark is building Alabama and Texas. And Texas is a good football team. They've had some decimating injuries at running back. I'll give you that. But I think, boy, Texas is going to be a tough out for Michigan, even at home.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare week over week, I mean, Texas's defense is going to be better than Fresno, and their offense is going to be light years better than Fresno.
Yeah. So I was curious about this too, Dan. So I found this picture on the interwebs, and I wanted to get your assessment. So Sharon Moore, this is Sharon Moore signing what looks like an Excel spreadsheet that's been printed off. It's supposedly a contract, but Dan, the news breaks that he is working under basically an MOE, which is like
MOU.
MOU, excuse me, an agreement of understanding with the university. Why would they do that?
Something popped up.
Yeah, something popped up.
According to Ward, those are literally his words. Something popped up. So he's got a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, but it's starting to turn into an MICKEY MOUSE type of a situation because I actually just did that on the fly.
Dude, that was awesome. I love that was so much.
That was fun. We might need to clip that up.
Yeah.
But anyways, so he's got a memorandum of understanding, which is not an uncommon practice when you hire somebody that quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's uncommon, incredibly uncommon, is for that to extend past the standard 90-day, expiration window that's usually in those agreements. So that was signed at like the third week of January, like the 24th or 26th. So we're now, damn near 5 months past the 90-day expiration in it. And there was a 90-day expiration in there. So if you look at their website, he's still listed as the offensive coordinator, is what somebody told me this morning. So, so here's the deal.
I don't even want to type this into my browser, but I'm going
to. Ward Manuel was on Scam Web Show last week talking about accepting responsibility for actions and accepting punishment when we broke the rules. Then this comes out and he uses the verbiage, he not only does he ignore it, he does the exact opposite. He acknowledges it and goes further and says, something popped up. I mean, what could that have been? That's so, it's bad, man. It's bad. And these clowns that think, are still out there trying to gaslight people. And if I see one more sign stealing is legal post, I'm going to figure out who these people are and go and leave a brown bag of dog poo on their front stoop and set it on fire.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that tripped me up the most is that people keep forgetting about the computer crimes thing. Like I don't. So what popped this up in my mind again last night was an interview with Cade Stover where he basically mentioned that they ran a play that they've never shown, that they've only ever practiced. It was for a tight end screen, and Michigan knew what it was, and now there's some questions like I saw somebody say, well, Connor Stallions is a computer hacker too, and I'm like, it wasn't Connor Stallions, folks. Did you guys forget about what started this whole thing with the computer crimes? And but anyways,
there's so much information out there
with Weiss.
I mean it I don't know, man. I don't know what to think anymore. All I know is they're going to get hammered.
Yeah. All right. So
but hey, let's hold on one second. The fact that this NOA has been out for what, almost 2 weeks now?
Yeah.
Or was maybe 10 days?
Yeah, it's almost it's almost 2 business weeks, I'd say.
Yeah. And nothing has leaked. Tells me everything I need to know that it's bad.
Yeah. It's got to be rough, man.
And other outlets are reporting that they're actively negotiating at this point. It's so bad. And I don't disagree with that. I do think that that's taking place. It's normal for it to take place. I mean, when you look at the NCAA's website, I mean, it's normal for negotiations to take place on sanctions once an NOA is issued during that 90-day response window. Like each side starts to feel each other out. Like, okay, well, you've issued the NOA. What are you thinking? If we just tell you to give us our sanctions, what are they going to be? Oh, okay. Well, how about this? What do you think about this? We want a 1-year bowl ban. You want 3. Let's settle on 2 type thing. It's going to be bad, and it's going to be consequential.
Yeah. Okay. So Dan, best thing about 1-0, opportunity to go 2-0, my friend. So 52-6, just a reminder, win over Akron. Second half looked really good. There's been some nitpicking after the game. Even I nitpicked a little bit, and we nitpicked a little bit. I think a little bit of it was my struggle was that performance, being up 17-3 in the first half. Is that good enough? Did they play good enough in that game to win a national championship? And then I kind of had to walk it back a little bit and say, okay, well, that's 12 or 13 games down the road. This is the first time that a lot of these kids are have gotten actually hit in a game for maybe, a year. So that was my lens, would that have been good enough? No, that would not have been a good enough start to the game. That was a slow start. But what do you think? I'm trying not to have an overreaction. I just thought that I want them to start faster. Let me just summarize everything I just said and start faster, please.
Well, and that is going to lead to my best bets for week 2.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
We'll take a look at that too.
So listen, I think you got to look at it on an individual basis, right? And for example, what I saw out of G. Scott is completely unacceptable and concerning.
Mm-hmm.
His blocking, especially in space, is absolutely atrocious. He looks disinterested. I swear on one play, he actually tried to avoid contact, is what it looked like to me. I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's certainly not the same mentality that Trey had, when he picked up the blitz.
That was amazing. I clipped that for us. I think you saw it. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but when, you look at somebody like an Austin Sareveld, was he perfect? No. Did he grade out as a champion? No. Was it his first start ever? Yes. Mm-hmm. So, you try to determine, is it a talent issue? Is it a no talent issue? And make your critique off of that. It wasn't perfect. If that was a national championship game and we performed that way, would we have won? No. Do I think we would have called the same plays, and had the same game plan? No. It was the first game.
Yeah.
It was essentially a glorified scrimmage. Well, I will be watching closely this week to see if those same issues exist. If some of the same issues exist week over week, then we're going to have a conversation.
Okay. I have a Ross Fulton clip. So if you don't follow Ross Fulton on Twitter, you probably should. He does a really, really good job of making sure that, breaking down film. I'm a big fan of it. And so this is going into the C gap. So it's a fold. And look, I want to slow play this. So look at the blocking. So Will Howard makes a check. He's making a check. And then look here. Look at this gap. And a great kick out block here by Jelani Thurman. Look at the turn. And look at that hole for Q to run through. I mean, my goodness. Dan, you're running through that hole, man. Look at that.
Let's not lose credibility by exaggerating things here, Chad.
I'm probably. I think you can make that.
I'm probably getting tackled for a loss.
But look at Seth, man. Like this is a great job by Seth McLaughlin. Saraveld's a little late, so he's a little late on the nose here, but good enough. It's good enough. And Tech, he's just running downfield looking to hit somebody. I'll watch it one more time. So the check, Seth pulls. Tegra's at the second level on their stud linebacker. So I
Couple
liked it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things on that. Another thing to point out on that play, I think one of the reasons that was so open is that Chip does a really good job of running same side zone plays, meaning that the vast majority of the time, if a running back's lined up on the left and they get the ball, it's usually a handoff across the formation back to the right. In that case, you saw Will reached to get the ball to Q, and it was a same side run play. So same side meaning the same side that the running back lines up on.
That's not a
Ryan in the past would like the line would use the pistol to try to disguise which side it was going to. Chip will just run same side.
Yeah,
so really interesting. Really interesting concept. It throws the defense off. They may be slanting to one side because of where the running backs lined up, and we run to where they're slanting away from, which is what happened on that play. We don't need to go back to that play, but if somebody wants to look up Ross's profile on Twitter, Josh Fryer's effort was concerning.
Yeah.
He just seems off balanced. He seems, he got thrown to the ground on that. It just, those are the kind of things where I'm like, it's concerning.
All right. So recruiting, Dan, you and I and Chuck had a rather long text message conversation yesterday about Naeem Offord. And so Naeem Offord's dad says one thing, his mom says another thing. Naeem's in Auburn. Tom Loy drops a visit graphic, or I guess it was Hayes Fawcett drops a visit graphic. Then Tom Loy puts in a flip to Auburn, and then there's a graphic from Hayes about flipping, and all this hype, and then nothing has happened.
Hayes's graphic, let's be clear here. Hayes's graphic was an unofficial visit edit. I don't think I've ever seen that for any other player.
No.
It is 100% engagement farming, and that's all that was.
Yeah.
Hayes's graphic. Like, to put together an edit for an unofficial visit, that's silly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely trying to remain positive, because we have OG Walt.
That is the wild card, and that is the one thing that's in our favor. Not the one thing, but that's the biggest thing that's in our favor is, listen, his father, he's definitely changed his tune a little bit, saying that it's a 3-horse race, which is, what was used in the post. But when you dig into the article, he definitely says there's a good relationship with the coaches at Auburn.
Yeah.
Which is a little new. He definitely went out of his way to say that, Walt's going to be hard to beat. Like, you can't beat Walt,
Right. And he talked about the fact there's a lot of season to be played too. And this is something you and I have talked about with a lot of recruits. Like, there's a lot of season to be played right now.
Yeah, and he gave the advice to Naeem to, like, listen, let the beginning of the season play out and see what happens. And I think that's his way of saying, Auburn, they might still be a ways away from where they want to get.
Yeah.
I got to look at their schedule to see what it looks like, but you put 2 or 3 losses up there in the first half of the season for him, and the luster dies down a little bit, right?
Yeah. Everybody looks great when you're undefeated in the offseason.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we can understate how big the Oregon-Ohio State game is. He is going to be on a visit there for that game. And there's obviously all sorts of, theories on that. Oh, well, he's going to Oregon because he likes Oregon, or, he's going there because it's Ohio State and he wants to work on the other recruits to get them to go to Ohio State. And, we'll see.
We will see.
We identified that as a J.J. Smith type recruitment from the get-go. I still feel better than some people do about it. I think Juck said he's 50-50. Chris mentioned on their show that he's 70% in favor of Ohio State. I'm more in line with Chris, 70 to 80% at this point, Ohio State. But anything can happen.
Yep, it sure can. So the weekend is upon us, Dan. 7:30 kickoff tomorrow night on to Western Michigan. Probably a little bit better than Akron. They did finish 4-8 last year, so they had more wins than Akron did at the end of the season. Game is on BTN. The spread is 38.5. The last time they played, Ohio State kind of pulled away late. They won 38-12 in 2015. That was the Cardell Jones and JT Barrett debacle, which they couldn't decide who the starter was early in the season. Western does bring back a fifth-year senior quarterback, Hayden Wolf. I think that's his second year in the program, transferred in from Old Dominion. And then their running back, Jalen Buckley, ran for over 1,000 yards. It's like 1,003, though. 1,003 yards as a sophomore last year, so he's a redshirt sophomore, be back this year. And I think the thing that raised the most little thing on my antenna was they did give Wisconsin all they wanted last Saturday, to be honest. I know that Wisconsin's breaking in a whole new coaching staff and a whole lot of new stuff, but they gave Wisconsin all that they wanted. So, what do you think, Dan? What are we looking at Saturday?
Prediction?
Mm-hmm.
Pain.
Just like Saturday.
I'm not going to put too much credence into what happened against Wisconsin. I mean, if you look at that, Wisconsin, like their time of possession was almost 2-1. It was like 3.5 to 1. Or I'm sorry, 3.5 to 2. So 3.5 to 2 or 2.5 to 1. I don't know. My fractions are off today, but they held the ball a lot more. I think the way that game played out said more about Wisconsin than it did about Western Michigan.
Agreed.
I just think that there was a lot of emphasis put on coming out slow. I mean, listen, our first 3 drives last week, we didn't get any points.
Correct.
That's just I obviously I didn't think that was going to happen because of what my bets were, and my bets are for a fast start. So you want me to do those now?
Yeah, you absolutely can. And I have a couple questions I want to ask you about Donnie and Cody, but go ahead with your bets.
Yeah, so I think it plays into the way I think this game is going to go. I think we're going to come out a lot faster, a lot sharper offensively. I just think that it's going to look a lot better, a lot earlier. People forget that the second play of the game last week could have very easily been a 60 or 70-yard touchdown. Should have been. I just think they're going to come out. I think Chip is going to come out with a chip on his shoulder a little bit. Mm-hmm. He was not impressed with his own play calling. It was very conservative to start. I think we're going to see – I think the beginning of the game this week is going to look like the third quarter last week.
Okay.
And so I am going to once again go with the first quarter over 13.5 total points. 2 scores in the first quarter. I'll be incredibly disappointed if that doesn't happen. And actually, Pat this morning on the morning roast took my other one, but I'm gonna stick with it because I like it. It's the first half minus 23.5. Ohio State minus 23.5 in the first half. I can just see it being a 28-3, 31-3, 35-3 type of a situation.
So here's my. You want to know why I don't gamble? You want to hear this one?
Probably the same reason I don't. I'm not.
Well, no. Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I've told you the story about my wife and I on the cruise where we just dumbfoundedly somehow won money. But the thing is that I would want to know who was getting the opening kick. If we took the ball first, I'd be more apt to take the over in the first quarter. That would be my thing. So but I think that I'm so scarred from, the Kerry Combs era defense where we and even the Michigan game where we just couldn't get off the field on third down and they just milked that clock. And then Akron did a good job of it last week too, where they just, they drew everything out. That's why I'm always concerned about that. But skipping over that piece because I don't gamble. What are your thoughts about Donnie and Cody this week? So I think you and I are both in this camp, and I argue with people on Twitter, which I don't normally do, but I've been doing it because I've just been annoyed lately at our spoiled fan base. Donnie doesn't need to play this week. He just doesn't. Bring him back for the Marshall game for a little bit of a tune-up in the first half. Get him ready for the Michigan State game. Let him play 40 snaps in that game. And then you're ready to roll into Iowa. But we don't need him this week. I don't want to mess with a hamstring, man. But stepping off my soapbox, where are you at on that?
Well, if he tweaked his hamstring going into week 1 last week, I would be of the same mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But like this happened like a month ago.
Yeah, it's about 5 weeks now.
So I think he's there, right?
Okay.
Like I think he's already there. This injury has been around and lingered longer than people, or happened longer ago than people realized.
Mm-hmm.
So if I've got faith in the staff. If they say he's good to go, I think they're of the same mindset that you are, and I think that's why he didn't play this past week. Is he wasn't, he's ready, but why risk it?
Yeah.
Well, if he was ready last week, then he's definitely ready this week, assuming he didn't tweak it again.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see him get out there for the first half.
Okay.
Get his legs under him, and then have some film to be able to coach him up on.
Yeah. You and I are in different camps on that one, because I think
yeah. As far as Cody goes, I don't know, because nobody knows what's wrong with him.
Okay. I'm not going to get into conspiracies, so I'll just leave it at that.
No, let's do it.
Somebody said it might be a rib. I've heard a rib injury. So and that seems to be.
Are you sure you're not picking that up off of what I said on Tuesday as to why Ryan doesn't disclose injuries? And I used it. For example, if it was a rib,
there's just
somebody could target it. Yeah. All right.
I'm just suspicious. I'm suspicious. I'm a little. I'm a little suspicious. I don't know. It could be. We don't know what it is. So, I don't want to put anything out in the ether, but there's definitely multiple people on Twitter have said they think it has something to do with his ribs. So we'll see. I don't know. That could be because of the Trey Henderson thing last year too. We didn't know it was his rib. We didn't know he broke his ribs. So, all right. So I don't think that Cody needs to play unless they really want him to play. I think you could do what we talked about last week or on Tuesday, which was put Arvell in the middle and put Sonny back at will.
Well, yeah, that on that note, if Cody can't go, I would start Arvell in the middle and put Sonny back where he's supposed to be at will. I can't put any stock in what we saw out of Sonny last week.
No.
He was out of position. He was out of a position that he was going to be starting at for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Helmet comm, all that kind of stuff.
I do have so Dylan Davis, again, I will recommend, if you don't follow him on X, you should follow him. His piece, he got a nice quote from Ryan Day. So Dan, specifically about Sonny Styles. So I wanted to pull that in. I specifically brought up Sonny for a reason. Yep. And here we go.
He's a very serious young man for his age, very mature, and came in early. And, because of all of that, he's matured even quicker than we could have thought. But to make that move from safety to linebacker, and then, like you said, making that jump, it shows, the work that he's putting in off the field that nobody sees. And I think that's the part for a lot of our guys, especially when you're young. It's hard to appreciate all the work that gets put in. Just gives you a chance to go play. Without that hard work, you're not going to go perform the way that we all expect everyone to perform. And so Sonny has put it in the weight room. What he did with Coach Mick in the offseason was tremendous. So physically, he's put on the weight. He's done that part of it. But it's in the film room. It's, working with James and defensive guys in terms of, extra film, watching it after practice, asking questions. I'll sit in on some of the linebacker meetings, and he's answering the questions. He's very, very involved in everything that goes on. And the other part of it was, as the Mike linebacker, you're communicating with the earpiece all the defensive calls. So you had that on display as well. So a good example of somebody who, and that's going to pay off down the road for him, but very versatile and and his ability to play multiple positions down the road just helps his overall value and his overall football IQ.
Bill Land.
He's a very serious young man.
So Dan, really good things said there by Ryan about Sonny and all the changes he's had to go through, not only physically but mentally, to be at the Mike linebacker, his maturity, and then you heard the NFL Ryan Day right there at the end, where it will increase his value. At the
Ryan's talking about a bunch of stuff this year that he just hasn't in the past. Yeah. It's fascinating, staying on the Sonny thing. Listen, we've heard that James feels that if Sonny is not a first-round draft pick after this season, then he has failed him. That tells me all I need to know.
Yep.
Speaking of NFL draft stock, I am predicting now that this is the last season that we will be seeing C.J. Hicks in an Ohio State uniform, and it's not because he's going to transfer. You've already got NFL scouts talking about the fact that he will be a 3-4 edge linebacker standing up and going after the quarterback. He's going to see those comments. He's going to get his draft stock report, and he's going to go. I can't. Unless they're willing to play him on the edge, he's not going to increase his draft stock by sticking around. He needs to just go and get in the league and do what he should be doing.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on Jim Knowles. It just doesn't fit. Like, I see so many people say Jim Knowles should just put him on the edge and let him go. It's not our defense. It's not our scheme. It's not what we do.
Yeah. It's not.
If we had a little bit more of a wide open, defensive scheme, then yeah. It's just not who we are or what we are or what we need to do. He just doesn't fit.
No, unfortunately.
And I don't see him. Maybe there's a chance that he transfers somewhere that will use him like that to maybe get him into the first or second round. Because I do think that he is a first or second round talent. I just don't think he's going to get to show it, and I'm not upset about it.
There's not very many schools that still do that. Alabama's one of them, so I guess you could take your shot there. Dan, speaking of Saturday. And speaking of who we are looking at, so I'm focused on Sonny Styles quite a bit. But who is someone you're looking out for, maybe a breakout performer on offense this weekend? So JJ kind of had his coming out party on Saturday. And what's wild to me is, like, he's technically our number 3 wide receiver. So he's lining up in the slot in a variety of other positions because you have Emeka and Carnell. That's a nice trio, and then Carnell, took that curl route to the house. But who's somebody you're looking for? Just genuinely curious. Maybe they have a little bit of a coming out party on Saturday. I have my answer, but I'll let you go first.
I just want to confirm. Did you just say JJ's our number 3?
Well, in the if you're looking at the way that they line them up, yes, because he's technically the third starting wide receiver, but he's our number 1. But we know that. I'm not saying he's not the best wide receiver in that room.
Yeah, I would, based on number of targets last week, I would say he's already number 1.
Yeah.
He's at the X. He's lined up outside. Emeka's moved inside. And Will's obviously comfortable with him again, and they're scheming to get him open. That wasn't Emeka or Carnell that did a fly in the third quarter. That was JJ. It wasn't Emeka or Carnell that they put in that screen position, which they could have put anybody in that screen position. On the second play of the season, they put JJ there in that stacked position and threw the ball to him. They could have done that with Carnell. They could have done that with Emeka. They chose to do it with JJ.
Mm-hmm.
My breakout person, I'm gonna say Jelani.
Okay.
I think Jelani earned some more snaps this week, unless we go back to the seniority BS game and G's out there first. I think Jelani, he wasn't perfect last week, but he showed a willingness and capability of blocking that we didn't get a chance to see last year. And I think we're gonna see the tight ends get some love this week. They got one target last week and zero receptions. I think they're going to scheme up the tight ends a little bit this week, if for no other reason than to A, keep them happy, and B, more importantly, get it on film and make people have to game plan for it, right? If you don't have to plan for a position, then you can spend more time on the other positions. They're going to get it on film. So I'm going to go with Jelani.
Okay. I'm going to go with Q. I think Q has a coming out party this week. I think he goes for over 100. I think he's probably going to get 2 touchdowns. And I think he's going to get a long one. I think he's going to break like a 40-yarder. I think it's going to be a Q week. Just like that gut feeling. Like I think he was just frustrated last week a little bit by the way that things played out. And then I know that Ryan Day was asked about and so was Chip Kelly about the split. So I think Trey ended up with like 4 or 5 more carries. But also Chip said he wants to up the number of carries. I think they had a total of under 25 touches total for the running backs, and that doesn't include James Peoples. But I think you'll see. I think Chip said he wants that number somewhere near 40. So I think that's what he said.
Chip's lying.
Yeah, I know. Well,
we ran 64 plays.
I know. But I think, in a dream world, maybe it would be like maybe once 80 plays and half them to, I mean, if you draw it back to what we talked about, if you at the 49% mark of running, and you had 80 plays, we'd be near 40 touches.
Yeah, but we haven't averaged 80 plays for 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah, it's been 3 years ago now. But anyways, I think Q has a big week this week, even if it's on 12 to 15 touches. So
I'm still a little. Would it be bearish on him and Trey? I think they're on a pitch count these first few games, and I think it is what it is, and I don't unless he breaks a long one like you said, I don't know if he gets close to 100. I just think they're both on a pitch count, and I'm fine with that.
Okay. Defensively, who are you looking at?
I'd like to see. I think Jack's going to get home this week.
Okay.
I mean, Jack Sawyer's performance last week.
He beat that poor kid up so bad.
That was a poster child performance for why they don't get hung up on sacks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you not think that Jack Sawyer affected that game last week?
Man, everything he did was affecting the game, yeah.
And he had no sacks.
Yeah, he abused their right tackle, man. He abused him.
I mean, Dylan Gabriel may not survive this season if they don't stick with their quick game against us, because whoever abandons the quick game and whatever quarterback holds the ball against us might die. Jack he's so quick and so good this year.
I'm watching Caleb Downs this week.
I almost went with Caleb. I'd like to see him make a play that.
Yeah. I'm watching Caleb Downs this week because Western, they will throw the ball a little bit. They do throw the ball around a little bit. Even with they have a bell cow back. So I'm kind of watching Caleb Downs. I want to see. So he had that sack last week. He got caught up a little bit in the wash. I think, even coming from Bama and, Knowles' scheme and system's a little different. Lathan Ransom, balled out last week. I think this is the Caleb Downs week. I think this is Caleb Downs coming out party. I think he ends up with a pick this week.
All right.
Yeah. Special teams. I'm just watching for more Brandon Ennis. I don't know about you. And I'll be very, very curious to see if they let Jaden Ballard do kick returns again, or if it's just Carnell back there.
It'll be interesting. Did Carnell get a return last week, or was it just Jaden?
It was Jaden Ballard every time. All right.
Yeah.
So Dan, last little nugget here I have for us. Chip Kelly's interview. I enjoy Chip Kelly so much. I just enjoy his personality. Now that we're not facing him and he's not coaching for another team or a team I vehemently just dislike. He blamed himself for us not getting to 70 points, which I thought was funny. He was critical of his own play calling. He more or less said they should never have been stopped because of the talent gap against Akron. So he talked about Will Howard and his versatility for a big guy. and how OSU needs the experience that he brings. So, Dan, glowing recommendation from Chip Kelly on Will Howard, specifically around versatility. I buy it. What
Yeah.
about you?
I think he's going to let him loose a little bit this earlier in the game. Like I
Yeah.
said earlier, I think that we're going to see I think we're going to see them come out with an open playbook like we did in the third quarter. And and I love Chip too, and I think he's for the most part a brutally honest person when he's up there.
Yeah.
He's still a coach. And for him to say that they didn't hold anything back last week, it's just like, Chip, friends don't lie.
Yeah. I have that in our notes. So
yeah. Come on, buddy.
yeah.
The what we saw in the third quarter was not anywhere close to what we saw when we came out of the, to open the game, like taking shots and everything else like that. It is what it is. He wanted to get certain stuff on film so we could coach it. And, based on what we heard, he coached it. That offensive line film session was not fun for anybody.
Well, I don't know about you, but I literally I scribbled this down as quickly as I could. He said in that press conference, Q didn't block for himself. He was talking about Quinshon Junkins, and basically Q couldn't block for himself. And I was like, note about that, because I talk about calling out the offensive line without calling out the offensive line. Basically that was get your crap together, guys. And again, I did note too, he said their game plans was specific based on the personnel scheme, and they didn't hold anything back. Chip, come on, Chip. We're friends. We're all friends. We're all friends here. We know that's not true.
The personnel scheme, they did what they had to do to put 52 points on the board against that personnel scheme. If he wanted to call the game, he would have, again, he could have put 80 to 100 points on the board, even with the way we played.
Yeah. The other thing I had, there was a couple of funnies in that, but he did say that you can see the game better from the box. They asked him about coaching up in the box, but you can feel the game better from the field. And you and I both know that, Dan. There's no doubt about that. But they asked him about the zip line, and he told everybody they needed to get Elon Musk on it so that he could go back and forth. So, I just enjoyed listening to Chip Kelly. So that I just brought that up because I thought he did a good interview. I thought it was funny. And then the last thing I want to get your opinion on, he said Ryan Day still had his input on play calls.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more going to be like, hey, run it here, pass it here, take a shot here. I think it's probably more like that.
Yeah.
Or this is 4-down territory, call a play accordingly. That I think that maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. That's why I think Ryan will be down the road. Maybe he was a little bit more involved and he actually said run, why banana. He was more specific with a play call this first game. But yeah, I mean, I fully expect him to say, or he might have gone into a series and said, hey, let's show these looks to get him on film type stuff. I can see that. I do think Chip we're going to see, I think Chip will temper his comments based on what Ryan says, right? So if Ryan doesn't tear apart the offensive line, I don't know if Chip will. Does that make sense? In the pressers?
Yeah.
He might allude to it, but he's not going to go all in like he would have if he was a head coach. Like when he was a head coach and he was running those, he was brutally honest.
Yeah.
I think he'll be tempered a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting too. So when you listen, when I listen to the interview, just because you and I do this now, I was listening to some of the questions from the beat, and just they sometimes I feel like Jerry Emick almost has to pre-screen these questions or something, because some of them are such low-hanging fruit. It's really frustrating. I know you're not going to get an answer if you ask what did you think of why Julian not getting in the football game because you weren't up 70-3? I get it, but I'm like, oh man, just ask a hard question. But I think it's also because it's the political season, and I'm like, just ask people hard questions. I want to know the answer to the hard questions.
Well, I mean, Berman Bill, Landis have mentioned it before. Like, they're not going to waste a question.
Yeah, Berms told me that. So many times.
They're not. They only get one unless you're Tim May.
Yeah.
You only get one question.
Yeah.
For the most part. Dylan talked about it on the show that Juck released yesterday, the segment that, he'll go into it with 3 questions in case somebody takes one of his before they get to him.
Yeah, I mean, so in deference, Tim May has earned the right to ask a follow-up question after 40 years of covering Ohio State football. Whether you love him or hate him, he's been around and everybody knows him. So,
Yeah.
Dan, any last thoughts, man? I think that covers it off for us as far as
No, I meant
go.
to when we were talking about the games, for the weekend. There's a couple of games to take a peek at. One of them in particular is going to be, what looked like an easy win or potentially easy win going into the season for Syracuse. Georgia Tech's coming to town and they're 2-0 now and seem to be like a pretty solid team. So
Georgia Tech's humming right now, man.
We might get to see a little bit of discomfort and controversy up in the
Orange.
The Orange. Is it the Orange Dome?
I don't know. The Syracuse Orange.
We'll see. Or, the story continues.
Yeah. Funny story. I almost went to college there.
My nephew and his wife went there. That's where they met. They got married up there 3 summers ago.
Yeah. So I wanted to go
on
visit.
campus. Went up there. It's a cool little town.
Yeah. I wanted to go visit.
Emily's family's up there.
And my dad had time off around Christmas. So he said, "I'll go up with you over
Christmas."
Yes, so
he knew what he was doing.
He did it on purpose because he knows how much I hate the cold and snow. He told me years later, he's like, "I took you up there so you could see how stupid you were."
Yeah.
And there was we had trouble getting there. There was 9 inches of snow. Oh yeah, I'll never forget that. He told me years later it's because he didn't want me to go to school there. So, anyways, story for another day probably. But yeah, as far as things I'm watching this weekend, Dan, I kind of brought it up. I'm paying attention to a few other games, and I wanted to give a shout out to my son's football team. They won with 4 seconds left on Tuesday night, so they are 1-0. We head into this week's game, so they we ran a double reverse that worked somehow magically, and we scored. So congratulations to those guys, 20-14, Smithville. So good work, boys.
They run it in, or did they throw off of it?
No, we ran it in.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was we were down around the 8-yard line. And it was almost like a Philly special, but the wide receiver ended up keeping it and catching it in the corner of the end zone. So
nice.
Congratulations, guys. I'm proud of you guys. We're having a lot of fun with this kid. So shout out to y'all. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to the game tomorrow night, 7:30 BTN, 38.5-point spread, Ohio State, Western Michigan. Let's go Bucks. If you're going to be there and you're enjoying it, we won't. Dan and I are older gentlemen now, but we have younger children. And so we will not be going live for the best damn recap this week. So
no,
I can't because my kids will hear everything I say, and it will probably wake them up. Because their bedroom is right above me.
Yeah.
So same with Ian. But regardless, we'll recap everything on Tuesday for you guys. And if not before, maybe we'll figure something out. But probably Tuesday. You guys enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the football games. Enjoy that football is back. Enjoy the weather. Thank you guys for always watching. Subscribe. We're almost to 500. Dan, any last words?
No, hit that like and subscribe button. We appreciate you. Go Bucks.
All right, go Bucks. Stay safe. And as always, go Bucks.